Hannah shoved the loaf of sourdough under her hoodie and walked toward the front door of YOON's like she belonged there. She kept her head down. She kept her steps even. She did not run because running would get her caught. She had learned that a long time ago. You walk like you are supposed to be wherever you are, and most people will believe it. She had slipped through the kitchen entrance 12 minutes earlier. The keypad on the back door had a 4-digit code, and she watched a delivery driver punch it in from across the alley. She memorized it in one look. Inside the kitchen, 11 staff members were moving at full speed during the dinner rush, plating dishes and shouting orders in Korean and English. Nobody looked at her twice. She grabbed the sourdough from the fresh bread rack, not the display rack, because she knew the difference. Display bread sat under heat lamps too long and went stale. The fresh rack was restocked every 45 minutes. She wanted bread that was actually worth eating. She made it through the kitchen. She made it past the bar. She made it past the hostess stand. She was 6 steps from the front door of the most exclusive Korean fusion restaurant in Beverly Hills when a hand caught her shoulder. The grip was firm, but not rough. She turned around and looked up into the face of a man she recognized immediately from the framed photos on the wall behind the hostess stand. Park Sung-min, the owner. He was tall, 6'2", clean-shaven, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved out of stone. He wore a black fitted turtleneck and dark slacks, and everything about him radiated the kind of authority that most people spend their whole lives trying to fake. He was not faking it. He was 32 years old and controlled a restaurant empire that stretched across 3 of the wealthiest cities in California. His late father had built the foundation. Sung-min had built the rest. The business world called his family the Korean Mafia because of the way they operated. Not with crime, but with a ruthlessness in negotiations and deal-making that left competitors with nothing. The Park family did not break laws. They broke people's confidence at the bargaining table and bought what was left. Sung-min was looking at Hannah with an expression she did not expect. It was not anger. It was curiosity. The restaurant had gone quiet. 40 guests who paid $400 a plate were watching a homeless woman in a stained gray hoodie get caught stealing bread by the most powerful man in the room. Hannah's stomach chose that exact moment to growl. Loud. Like her body wanted to make sure the humiliation was complete. She braced herself. She expected him to call the police. She expected a lecture, a scene, security guards grabbing her arms. Instead, Sung-min looked down at the shape of the bread under her hoodie. Then he looked at her face. Light brown skin smudged with dirt, full lips pressed together hard, eyes that were proud and terrified at the same time. He said 5 words. "You look like you're starving." Then he pulled out a chair at the nearest empty table and told his head chef to bring out the full 7-course tasting menu. Every dish, for her, right now. Hannah did not sit down. She stared at him like he had lost his mind. "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity," he said. "It's an interview." He told her he had been watching the security feed from his office upstairs. He saw her enter through the kitchen door without any staff member noticing. She bypassed the keypad, moved through a kitchen full of people during the busiest service of the week, selected the right bread from the right rack, and nearly walked out the front door in under 90 seconds. His security team was 8 people. None of them caught her. He only caught her because he happened to glance at his phone at the right moment. Sung-min pulled the chair out a little further. "I don't need another dishwasher," he said. "I need someone clever. Sit down." Hannah sat, not because she trusted him, because she had not eaten a real meal in 2 days, and the food that started arriving at the table smelled like everything good she thought the world had stopped offering her. She ate. He sat across from her and watched. When the last plate was cleared, he made her an offer. A full-time position at Yoon's, not washing dishes, not waiting tables. She would be his personal operations assistant, the person managing the logistics and moving parts behind his restaurant empire. Hannah almost choked on her water. "Why?" "Because anyone who can ghost through my security system is either a threat or an asset," he said. "I'd rather you be on my payroll than someone else's." She said yes. What else was she going to say? She was sleeping in a 2009 Honda Civic parked behind a laundromat on La Chenega Boulevard. Park Sung-min did not know it yet, but the woman he just hired was going to save everything he had. And he was going to be the reason she finally stopped running. Now let me ask you something. If a stranger caught you at your lowest moment and offered you a chance like that, would you trust it or would you run? Tell me in the comments. And if you are watching this and you have not liked this video yet, go ahead and do that right now. If you are not subscribed to this channel, do well to do so. Sungmin gave Hannah an apartment. A small studio in Koreatown, nothing fancy. White walls, a single window, a kitchen barely big enough for one person. But it had a lock on the door. It had a shower. It had a bed. Hannah sat on the edge of that bed the first night and cried so hard her chest hurt. She pressed her face into the pillow so the neighbors would not hear. 3 months she had been sleeping in her car. 3 months of folding herself into the backseat with a jacket as a blanket, waking up to stiff joints and the sound of traffic, brushing her teeth in gas station bathrooms. 3 months of being invisible. Now she had a bed. She slept for 11 hours straight. She showed up to work the next morning 20 minutes early. Sungmin was already there. He noticed. He did not say anything about it, but she saw him glance at the clock and then at her, and something shifted in his expression. Like she had passed a test she did not know she was taking. The job was intense. Sungmin's operation was a machine with 100 moving parts. YOON's Beverly Hills was the flagship, but he also had locations in Palo Alto and Atherton, plus 2 more in development. 1 in Aspen, 1 in Bellevue, Washington. Hannah's role was to coordinate between all of them. Vendor schedules, staffing logistics, supply chain issues, event bookings. She was the connective tissue that kept the whole body running. She learned fast, faster than anyone expected. But not everyone was happy about her arrival. Vivienne Park was Sungmin's younger sister. 29, USC graduate, and polished in a way that made Hannah feel like she was standing next to a magazine cover every time they were in the same room. Vivienne managed the front-of-house operations and the social media presence for the YOON's brand. She wore Chanel like it was a uniform. She had perfect posture. And she took one look at Hannah on her first day and decided she was a problem. Vivienne pulled Sungmin aside that afternoon. Hannah could not hear the conversation, but she could see it through the glass wall of his office. Vivienne's hands were moving fast. Her face was tight with frustration. She was pointing toward the main floor where Hannah was organizing vendor files at her new desk. Whatever Vivienne said, Sungmin shut it down fast. Later, Derek Hale, Sungmin's head of security, told Hannah what happened. He told her because Derek was the kind of man who believed in giving people fair information. She told him he was out of his mind for hearing you, Derek said. He was leaning against the doorframe of the office kitchen, arms crossed, watching Hannah with the calm, steady gaze of someone who had been assessing threats for a living for over a decade. He told her you're smarter than half the people on payroll, including her. Derek was 34. He and Sungmin had been friends since they were kids growing up in Scottsdale, Arizona. He had followed Sungmin to California when the business moved west, and he ran security for every YOON's location. He was not hostile toward Hannah, but he was careful. He ran a background check on her the day she was hired. He found no criminal record, just a trail of bad luck, eviction filings, a drained bank account, a missing ex-boyfriend. He told Sungmin she was clean, but he kept watching her anyway. That was his job. The first person to actually be kind to Hannah was Chef Ronan Bay. He was 40 years old, had been cooking for the Park family since Sungmin's father was alive. And he had the broad shoulders and calm face of a man who had seen everything and judged nothing. On Hannah's second day, she found a container of homemade kimchi jjigae on her desk with a sticky note that said, "Eat before you work. Boss forgets that humans need fuel." Hannah almost cried again. She did not. She ate the soup and got back to work. By the end of her first week, she had reorganized the vendor filing system, flagged 3 scheduling conflicts across the Palo Alto and Atherton locations, and caught an overcharge on a seafood delivery that would have cost the company $11,000 if nobody noticed. She cross-referenced the invoice with market rates and made one phone call to the supplier. The price was corrected within the hour. Sungmin read her report on the seafood issue. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her through the glass wall of his office. For the first time, something close to a smile crossed his face. It did not fully land, but it was there. Vivienne watched all of this, and she started whispering. Small things at first. Comments to other staff members in the break room. Who is she really? Where did she come from? Why does Sungmin trust her so fast? A homeless woman handling sensitive business information. Does that sound right to you? The whispers spread the way whispers always do. Quietly, effectively. Hannah heard them. She pretended she did not. That Friday night, she sat on the floor of her studio apartment with her laptop and video called her younger brother Miles. He was 22, finishing his last year at Wayne State University back in Detroit. He had their mother's wide smile and their father's stubbornness. He was the only family Hannah had left. Their mother died of cancer when Hannah was 23. Their father had left when they were kids. Miles was it. He was everything. Hannah had been sending him money whenever she could. But for the last 3 months, while she was living in her car, she told him she was just between jobs. She never told him she was homeless. She could not do that to him. He would have dropped out and come to find her, and she would rather starve than let that happen. "I got a new job," she said to the screen. She was smiling, and it felt unfamiliar on her face, like a muscle she had not used in too long. Miles whooped so loud she had to pull the phone back from her ear. "What kind of job? Where? How much they paying you?" "It's at a restaurant group. High-end. Beverly Hills." "Beverly Hills? Han, you serious right now?" She laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in months, and it came out rusty and bright at the same time. After they hung up, she sat there for a while, staring at the ceiling. Then she said out loud to nobody, "Okay, Mom, I think it might be okay." She went to bed feeling something she had almost forgotten how to feel: hope. But the universe was not done with Hannah Delaney yet, not even close. The following Monday, she stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home. She was organizing documents on Sungmin's desk because he had asked her to file the quarterly reports before morning. And that was when she saw the folder. It was labeled Acquisition, Project Sovereign. It was open. She did not mean to read it, but the first page had a list of names, and one of them hit her like a truck. Michael Whitmore. Her ex-boyfriend. The man who had emptied their joint savings account and vanished without a word while she was working a double shift at the diner she used to waitress at. $12,000. Everything she had. Gone in one afternoon. She came home to an empty apartment and a zero-balance bank notification. Michael's name was on a list of business associates connected to a rival restaurant group called the Sable Dining Group, a group that Sungmin was apparently trying to acquire or compete with. Hannah closed the folder. Her hands were shaking. She told herself it was a coincidence. It had to be a coincidence. The world was not this small and this cruel. She was wrong. Something changed between Hannah and Sungmin over the next 2 weeks, and neither of them had the language for it. It started small. He began finding reasons to be near her. He would come out of his office to check on the vendor reports that she was handling for the new Aspen location, standing 3 feet away while she made phone calls, listening to her negotiate with a confidence that had not existed when she first sat down at that table with stolen bread under her hoodie. When she hung up and told him she had gotten the vendor to drop the price by 15%, he said one word: "Good." Then he walked away because he did not know what else to say. Sungmin was not a man who understood his own emotions. He understood numbers, strategy, leverage, and the precise moment to close a deal. He did not understand why the sound of Hannah's voice on the phone made him stop working to listen. He did not understand why he kept noticing things about her. The way she tucked her pen behind her ear when she was thinking. The way she organized her desk with military precision. The way she always said good morning to every single staff member, even the ones who whispered about her behind her back. Hannah noticed him noticing. She was not stupid, but she shut it down in her head immediately. This man was her boss. He had pulled her out of the gutter. She was not about to risk the first good thing that had happened to her in years by developing feelings for someone who signed her paychecks. So she focused on the work. The work was good. The work was safe. But Vivienne had other plans. The Beverly Hills location hosted a private dinner for elite clients every quarter. Tech founders from Palo Alto, real estate moguls from Atherton, old money families from Hillsborough. The event was Vivienne's domain, and she ran it with surgical precision. Every detail mattered. The flowers, the music, the lighting, the seating arrangements. This quarter, Vivienne deliberately assigned Hannah to a visible role. She would be coordinating the table arrangements and greeting guests as they arrived. It was a position that required the right look, the right energy, the right clothes. Vivienne knew Hannah did not own the right clothes. That was the whole point. Hannah showed up the night of the dinner in the best outfit she could put together. A clean black blouse from a thrift store on Fairfax. Slacks she had pressed herself with an iron she bought for $6 at a second-hand shop. Simple black flats. She looked fine. Professional, even. But compared to the designer everything in the room, the gap between her world and theirs was visible. Vivienne watched from across the room with a small, satisfied smile. What Vivienne did not count on was that Hannah Delaney was not a woman who crumbled under pressure. She had survived worse than a room full of rich people. A tech CEO's wife asked Hannah where she was from. Hannah said Detroit. The woman's eyes lit up because her college roommate had been from Detroit and she had always wanted to visit. They talked for 10 minutes about the city, about the comeback neighborhoods, about the food scene. The woman was charmed. A seating mix-up threatened to put two rival investors at the same table. Hannah caught it before anyone sat down, rearranged the cards, and redirected both parties with a warm smile and a story about how the chef had prepared something special for their specific tables. Neither investor ever knew there was a problem. By the end of the night, 3 different clients had personally complimented Sung Min on the new girl. One of them, a real estate developer from Atherton, told him she was the most genuine person he had met at any of these events in 5 years. Sung Min looked across the room at Hannah. She was laughing with a guest, her head tilted back, the kind of laugh that came from her whole body, and something in his chest tightened in a way he had never felt before. Vivienne was furious. The evening had been designed to expose Hannah's weaknesses. Instead, it exposed her strengths. That same week, Hannah did something she knew she should not do. She started researching Michael Whitmore on her own. She told herself it was just curiosity. She told herself she just wanted to know where he ended up. But it was more than that. The name on that folder had been eating at her for 2 weeks, and she needed to understand how the man who destroyed her life had ended up connected to her boss's biggest business rival. What she found made her sick. Michael had not just disappeared after stealing her money. He had resurfaced in Newport Beach, California, working as a junior partner for a man named Victor Sable. Victor was 52 years old, silver-haired, and the owner of the Sable Dining Group, a luxury restaurant empire that competed directly with Sung Min's. The Sable Dining Group had 5 high-end locations along the West Coast, and Victor had spent the last 2 years trying to expand into the same markets Sung Min was targeting. Bellevue, Aspen, the same cities. Project Sovereign, the folder Hannah had seen on Sung Min's desk, was about this exact competition. Sung Min was developing a property in Bellevue for a new YOON's location. Victor Sable wanted that same market. They were at war, and Michael was on the other side. Hannah sat with that information for a long time. She did not tell Sung Min. She told herself it was because the connection was irrelevant. She was not in contact with Michael. She had not spoken to him since the day he vanished. There was nothing to report. But the real reason she stayed quiet was fear. If Sung Min found out that her ex-boyfriend worked for his biggest rival, he might think she was a plant. A spy. Someone Victor had sent to infiltrate his operation, and she would lose everything. The job, the apartment, the hope. She could not lose the hope. She had just gotten it back. A few nights later, Hannah was sitting on the back steps behind the restaurant after closing. The kitchen was dark. The alley smelled like grease and rain. She was eating leftover japchae from a to-go container and looking up at the sky, except there were no stars. Beverly Hills was too bright for stars. She heard the door open behind her. Sung Min sat down on the step next to her without asking. They did not speak for almost a full minute. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that only happens between two people who do not need to fill the air with noise to feel at ease. Then Hannah said, "In Detroit you could see the stars sometimes. Not a lot, but sometimes." Sung-min was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "In Scottsdale you could see all of them." Another silence, longer this time. Then he said, "You did well tonight." She looked at him. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the sky too, the sky with no stars. Something shifted between them on those steps, something quiet and enormous, something neither of them was ready for but both of them felt. The next morning, Derek called Sung-min before the restaurant opened. He had been investigating the Sable Dining Group's operations as part of standard competitive intelligence, and he had found something that concerned him. Victor Sable had recently brought on a new associate who had a personal connection to a current YOON's employee. Derek had not yet identified which employee, but he told Sung-min directly, "There's a possibility we have a mole." Sung-min's voice went flat. "Find out who." The word mole changed Sung-min. His father, Park Yi-won, had built the family empire from nothing. Started as a fish market vendor in Koreatown, worked 20-hour days, built a real estate portfolio that stretched across Southern California. And then, 10 years in, he made the mistake of trusting an outsider, a business partner who had been feeding companies secrets to a competitor for over a year. By the time Yi-won discovered the betrayal, he had lost 2 major properties and nearly went bankrupt. Yi-won recovered. He always recovered. But the lesson he passed down to Sung-min was permanent: trust nobody outside the family, ever. When Yi-won died of a heart attack 3 years ago, Sung-min had spent 2 years cleaning up the last pieces of fallout from that old betrayal. He swore he would never let it happen again. And now Derek was telling him it might be happening again. Sung-min told Derek to investigate every employee hired in the last 6 months. Hannah had been hired 5 weeks ago. She was at the top of the list. While Sung-min's suspicion was growing, Hannah's past came knocking. She was sitting at her desk on a Wednesday afternoon, reviewing supply orders for the Atherton location, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know where you work now, Han. We should talk. Don't make this harder than it has to be." She recognized the tone before she even finished reading. The casual control, the implied threat disguised as friendliness. Michael. He always talked like he was doing you a favor even when he was taking everything from you. She blocked the number. Her hands were trembling, and when she walked through the kitchen 10 minutes later, she nearly dropped a stack of order forms. Chef Ronan caught them before they hit the floor. He looked at her face and said, "You okay?" "I'm fine." He did not believe her. She could see it. But he handed the papers back and nodded and let it go, because Ronan was a man who understood that people talk when they are ready and not a moment before. That same week, Victor Sable showed up at YOON's Beverly Hills unannounced. He walked through the front door during lunch service like he owned the place. Victor was the kind of man who entered every room as if he had already bought it. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably tailored, with eyes that calculated the value of everything they landed on. He requested a private meeting with Sung-min, and because turning him away would signal weakness, Sung-min agreed. They sat in the private dining room. Victor made his pitch. A partnership, merge their restaurant empires, shared ownership. Together, they would dominate the West Coast luxury dining market from Seattle to San Diego. Victor framed it as mutual benefit. 2 kings joining forces instead of wasting resources fighting each other. Sung-min listened to the entire pitch without interrupting. Then he said, "I don't partner with people I don't respect." Victor smiled. It was a slow, cold smile. The kind that a man wears when he has already decided how he is going to destroy you and is just enjoying the moment before it begins. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and thanked Sung-min for his time. On his way out, Victor walked through the main floor. He passed Hannah's desk near the service corridor. He stopped. He looked at her. Not a glance, a look, like he was confirming something. Then he continued walking and left the restaurant. Hannah's stomach dropped. She could not tell if Victor recognized her from Michael or if it was random. But the look was not random. She felt it in her bones. Despite the growing tension around them, Sungmin and Hannah's connection continued to deepen. He asked her to travel with him to Palo Alto for a meeting with potential investors for the Bellevue expansion. It was a 3-hour drive, and somewhere on Highway 101, with the Pacific Ocean visible in the distance, and the car quiet except for the hum of the engine, the professional wall between them cracked open. Hannah told him about Detroit, about growing up on the east side in a neighborhood that was rough but full of people who looked out for each other. About her mother, Denise, who worked 2 jobs and still found time to braid Hannah's hair every Sunday. About putting herself through Michigan State with a hospitality management degree while working at a diner and a laundromat simultaneously. About how she thought the degree would be her ticket out, and how life kept tackling her at the knees instead. She did not mention Michael, not yet. Sungmin listened without interrupting. Then, because she had been honest with him, he returned the favor. He told her about his father. Yiwon was brilliant, a visionary, but he was brutal. Cold in the way that men who build empires from nothing often are, because softness feels like a luxury they cannot afford. Yiwon pushed Sungmin relentlessly. Every report card had to be perfect. Every business lesson had to be absorbed immediately. Every mistake was a failure, and failure was unforgivable. The last conversation Sungmin ever had with his father was an argument. Yiwon told him he was not ready to lead the business. Sungmin told him he was wrong. They yelled at each other for 20 minutes. Yiwon hung up the phone. 2 days later, he was dead. Sungmin had never told anyone that story before. He did not know why he told Hannah. But when she reached over and briefly touched his arm, just a light pressure of her fingers on his sleeve, he felt something unclench in his chest that had been locked tight for 3 years. The investor meeting in Palo Alto went perfectly. Hannah had prepared a presentation so thorough, so detailed, so precisely tailored to each investor's priorities, that the lead investor leaned across the table afterward and asked Sungmin, "Where did you find her?" Sungmin looked at Hannah. She was gathering her notes, completely unaware of the compliment. He said, "She found me." They drove back to Beverly Hills in the kind of comfortable silence that only happens when 2 people have said enough true things to each other that words become optional. That night, Derek called Sungmin. His voice was serious in a way that Sungmin recognized immediately. "I narrowed it down," Derek said. "Hannah's ex-boyfriend, Michael Whitmore, he's working for Victor Sable, has been for months." Silence on the line. Derek continued, "I'm not saying she's involved, but you need to consider the possibility that this isn't a coincidence." Sungmin was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Pull her full file, everything, go deep." He hung up and stood in his apartment looking out the window at the Beverly Hills skyline. The city was all light and no stars. And somewhere in his chest, the thing that had unclenched during the drive was locking itself shut again. Hannah knew something was wrong the moment she walked into the restaurant the next morning. Sungmin was different, not angry exactly, colder. The warmth that had been building between them over the past weeks, the almost smiles, the long conversations, the way he lingered near her desk for no reason, all of it was gone, replaced by a professional distance so sharp it felt like a blade. He stopped including her in high-level meetings. He reassigned her responsibilities for the Bellevue and Aspen projects to other team members. He spoke to her only when necessary and only about operational details. Hannah ran through every interaction she had with him over the past few days, trying to find the moment she made a mistake. She could not find it because she had not made one. She just did not know what he had found out. Vivienne saw the shift immediately and moved in like a predator sensing weakness. With Hannah's responsibilities reduced, Vivienne pushed her into menial work. Inventory counts in the storage room, reorganizing the supply closet, filing paperwork that an intern could have handled. She made sure other staff members noticed, too. She would walk past Hannah counting boxes of napkins and say, just loud enough for people to hear, things like, "Oh good, you found your level." Hannah took it. She did not complain. She did not show what she was feeling on her face. She went home to her studio apartment each night and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, feeling the old hopelessness creeping back in. The same darkness that had settled over her when she was sleeping in her car. The feeling that getting close to something good was just the universe's way of setting up the next fall. Then Michael showed up in person. He was waiting outside her apartment building on a Thursday evening, leaning against a parked BMW that definitely was not his. He looked good, better than she had ever seen him. New clothes, expensive haircut, the kind of confidence that comes from having someone else's money in your pocket. "Han," he said, smiling like no time had passed, like he had not destroyed her life. Hannah stopped walking. Every muscle in her body went rigid. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk. I know I messed up. I was in a bad place back then. I want to make it right." She stared at him. The audacity of this man standing in front of her, looking her in the eye, telling her he wanted to make it right while wearing a watch he bought with her stolen savings. Then Michael got to the real point. Victor Sable wanted information. Specifically, he wanted details about Sungmin's Bellevue development project. Timelines, costs, investor names, internal financials. Michael said if Hannah delivered the information, Victor would pay her $50,000. Cash. "That's enough to pay off Miles's last year," Michael said. "His tuition, his books, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about him anymore." He had done his research. He knew exactly where to hit her. Miles was her weak spot, her only weak spot. Hannah looked at the man who stole everything from her and was now asking her to steal from the man who gave everything back. "Get away from my door," she said. Her voice was steady. "If I ever see you again, I'm calling the police." Michael's friendly mask slipped, just for a second. Underneath, it was the same cold calculation she should have recognized 2 years ago but was too in love to see. "You'll change your mind," he said. Then he turned and got into the BMW and drove away. Hannah went inside, locked the door, sat on the floor of her apartment, and pressed her hands against her face until the shaking stopped. The next day at work, Sungmin called her into his office. The door was closed. Derek was standing by the window with his arms folded. The room felt like an interrogation. Sungmin looked at her from behind his desk. His face was completely closed. No almost smiles, no warmth, no curiosity, just stone. "Do you know a man named Michael Whitmore?" The floor dropped out from under Hannah's world. They knew. She could lie. For one heartbeat, the thought crossed her mind. Deny it. Say she had never heard the name. Buy herself time to figure out a plan. But Hannah had been lied to, stolen from, abandoned, and broken, and the one thing she had never lost in all of it was her honesty. It was the only thing she had left that was entirely hers. She looked Sungmin in the eye. "Yes, he's my ex-boyfriend. He stole $12,000 from me and disappeared. I found out he works for Victor Sable 2 weeks ago. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd fire me. I have never given him or anyone else a single piece of information about your business, and I never will." The room was silent for a long time. Derek watched Sungmin. Sungmin watched Hannah. Then Sungmin said, "Leave my office." Hannah walked out. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. That evening, across town in Santa Monica, Vivienne Park sat down at a private table in a restaurant that was not one of her brother's. Across from her sat Victor Sable. She slid a USB drive across the table. On it, detailed financial projections for the Bellevue project, internal investor communications, Sungmin's entire development timeline, proprietary data that could give Victor everything he needed to outmaneuver her brother at every turn. Vivienne was the mole. She had been feeding Victor Sable information for 4 months, not for money. Victor had promised her something worth more than money, full ownership of the YOONS brand, the family legacy that she believed was rightfully hers. Because their fathers had left everything to Sungmin, the restaurants, the real estate, the company, Vivienne had received nothing, no explanation, no acknowledgement. She spent 3 years watching her brother run the empire their father built, and every day of those 3 years the same thought burned in her chest like an open wound. He chose Sungmin. He always chose Sungmin. Victor Sable saw that wound and knew exactly how to exploit it. Sungmin put Hannah on paid leave pending an internal investigation. He told her it was standard procedure. It did not feel standard. It felt like being thrown away. She went back to her studio apartment and sat on the floor, the same floor where she had sat and felt hope. The hope was gone now. In its place was that old familiar feeling, the feeling of the ground disappearing. She called Miles. He picked up on the first ring like he always did when she called. Before she could say a word, he said, "What happened?" He always knew. Even across the country, even through a phone, her little brother could hear the difference in her breathing when something was wrong. She told him, not everything, but enough. She told him about the suspension, about the accusation, about the feeling that everything she had worked for in the past 6 weeks was slipping through her fingers. Miles was quiet for about 3 seconds. Then he said, "I'm coming to California." "Miles, no. You have finals in 2 weeks." "Hannah, you have been taking care of me my entire life. Every paycheck, every sacrifice, everything you gave up so I could stay in school. Let me show up for you one time." She closed her eyes. "Stay in school, please." He did not argue, but she could hear in his voice that the conversation was not over. Meanwhile, Sungmin was at war with himself. He replayed Hannah's words in his head constantly. The way she looked at him when she said it, the steadiness of her voice, the wet shine in her eyes that she refused to let become tears until she was out of the room. He had spent his whole adult life reading people. His father had trained him to spot a lie from across a negotiating table. Hannah was not lying. He knew it in his gut. But his gut was also the thing that made him hire a woman who stole bread from his restaurant because something in her face moved him, and he could not trust his own judgment anymore because his judgment was compromised. He had feelings for her, real feelings. The kind he had spent his entire life avoiding because feelings make you vulnerable and vulnerability gets you destroyed. Derek came to him 3 days into the investigation with an update that changed everything. "The timeline doesn't match," Derek said. He spread documents across Sungmin's desk. "I traced the information leaks back 4 months. Hannah has only been here 6 weeks. Whatever is going on, it started before she walked through that kitchen door." Sungmin stared at the documents. "Then who?" Derek leaned back in his chair. "That's what I'm trying to figure out, but I need you to think about something. Is there anyone in your inner circle, someone who has been here from the beginning, who has a reason to want this company to fail?" The question hung in the air. Sungmin did not answer it, but something in his expression shifted, like a door he had refused to open was starting to crack. While Sungmin processed, Victor Sable accelerated. Using the information Vivienne had provided, Victor outbid Sungmin on a critical property lease in Bellevue. The property owner switched sides overnight, citing a more competitive offer. Sungmin's team was blindsided. Then the investors started getting anonymous packages, financial documents that appeared to show YOONS was over-leveraged, overextended, and approaching insolvency. The documents were fabricated, but they were fabricated well enough to spook people who were risking millions of dollars. 2 investors pulled their commitments within the same week. Sungmin was losing ground, and he could not figure out how Victor was always 1 step ahead. Chef Ronan visited Hannah at her apartment. He did not call first. He just showed up at her door with 2 containers of food and the calm presence of a man who had weathered storms that would have broken lesser people. They sat at her small kitchen table and ate together. Ronan told her a story about Sungmin's father. "Yiwon once fired his best restaurant manager over a misunderstanding," Ronan said. "Thought the man was skimming money from the register. Turned out it was an accounting error. Yiwon realized he was wrong 3 days later. You know what he did? Drove to that man's house at midnight, apologized in person, offered him a raise and a promotion." Hannah looked at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the Parks are stubborn and proud and terrible at admitting when they're wrong. But they come around. They always come around. Give him time." Hannah pushed her food around her plate. "What if I don't have time?" Ronan looked at her steadily. "Then make time. You didn't survive what you survived by sitting around and waiting for other people to decide your fate." He left. Hannah sat alone in her apartment and thought about what he said. She thought about it for a long time. Then she made a decision. She still had access to her work email. It had not revoked it when she was suspended. She was not going to use it to steal information or do anything dishonest, but she was going to use it to find the truth, not to prove her innocence. To protect Sung-min, because whoever the real mole was, they were still inside YOONs, still feeding Victor Sable information, and Sung-min was in danger. She spent 2 days going through every internal communication she could access. She looked for patterns. Who had access to the financial projections that were leaked? Who was present at meetings where sensitive information was discussed? Who had contact with anyone outside the company? On the second night, at 2 a.m, she found it. An email chain. Internal YOON's account communicating with an external encrypted address. The internal emails discussed Bellevue timelines, investor names, development costs, everything Victor Sable would need. The internal account belonged to Vivienne Park. Hannah stared at the screen. Sung-min's own sister, his blood. The woman who had whispered about Hannah, humiliated her, tried to make her fail, the whole time she was the one betraying him. Hannah closed her laptop and pressed her hands over her mouth and breathed. Hannah had a choice. She could take this evidence to Sung-min and risk him not believing her. She was the suspended employee with the suspicious ex-boyfriend. Accusing his sister, his own family, could look like a desperate deflection, a play to redirect blame. Or she could walk away. Leave the job, leave Beverly Hills, go back to Detroit, and let the Parks sort out their own mess. She thought about walking away for about 30 seconds. Then she thought about the man who pulled out a chair for a starving woman who stole bread from his restaurant. The man who drove her to Palo Alto and told her about the last argument he had with his dying father. The man who said, "She found me," to a room full of investors. She picked up her phone and called Miles. Miles answered immediately. It was 5 a.m. in Detroit, and he sounded like he had not been sleeping anyway. She told him everything. The emails, Vivienne, Victor Sable, all of it. Miles shifted into a mode she had never seen from him before. He was a computer science major, and his brain worked in systems and patterns. He walked her through how to properly document digital evidence, screenshots with visible timestamps, metadata preservation, cross-referencing the dates of Vivienne's emails with specific events, like when certain financial documents appeared in Victor's hands. For 2 hours, brother and sister worked together across the country, building a case so tight that it could not be dismissed as fabrication or coincidence. By the time they were done, Hannah had a folder on her desktop that contained 23 documented instances of Vivienne transmitting confidential YOON's information to an external party. "You sure about this?" Miles asked. "No," Hannah said, "but I'm doing it anyway." She did not go to Sung-min first. She went to Derek. They met at a diner in Koreatown, neutral ground. Hannah slid a printed folder across the table and watched Derek read every page. His face did not change as he went through the evidence, but his jaw tightened with each page he turned. When he finished, he closed the folder and sat back in the booth. "I had a feeling," he said. "I didn't want to be right." He looked at her. "Why are you doing this? You have every reason to walk away. He suspended you. His sister humiliated you." Hannah held his gaze. "Because he gave me a chance when nobody else would, and I don't abandon people, even when they abandon me." Derek studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, picked up the folder, and left. He brought it to Sung-min that night, after hours. The restaurant was empty, just the two of them in the office with the city lights glowing through the windows. Derek put the folder on the desk and said, "You need to read this." Sung-min read it, every page, every timestamp, every email. When he finished, he picked up the folder and threw it against the far wall. Papers scattered across the floor. He stood there with his hands braced on his desk and his head bowed, and he did not speak for a very long time. It was not disbelief. It was the opposite. He believed every word, and that was worse. He called Vivienne the next morning, told her to come to the office. She arrived looking polished and composed, the way she always looked, not knowing what was waiting for her. Sung-min put the evidence on the desk between them. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Vivienne's composure collapsed in stages. First, she denied it. Then she deflected. Then the anger broke through and she stopped pretending. She screamed at him. She told him their father chose him over her. She told him she spent her entire life being second, being overlooked, being the child who was not good enough. She told him the will was the final proof that she never mattered. Yiwon left Sung-min the business, the properties, the legacy. He left Vivienne nothing. And Victor Sable was the only person who ever looked at her and saw someone worth investing in. Sung-min listened to all of it. He let her finish. Then he spoke, and his voice was quiet and steady and full of a pain he was not trying to hide. Dad didn't leave you out of the will because he didn't love you, Vivienne. He left me the business because he knew I could handle the pressure. The enemies, the fights, the weight of it. He left you the trust fund because he wanted you to be free. He wanted you to have the life he never got to have. No boardrooms, no rivals, no sleepless nights. He was trying to protect you. Vivienne went still, completely still. What trust fund? Sung-min stared at her. The trust fund. The one Dad set up for you. You were supposed to receive access to it on your 30th birthday. It's $2.4 million. Vivienne's face changed. Something cracked behind her eyes. She did not know. She had never been told. Their father's attorney had been trying to reach her for months, but she had blocked all communication related to the estate because it was too painful. She thought she was left with nothing. She thought her father threw her away. And she had been so consumed by that belief that she tried to burn down everything her brother had built. Sung-min told her she was removed from all YOON's operations effective immediately. She would not be arrested. She would not be publicly exposed. But she was done. Vivienne left the office. She did not say goodbye. That night, Sung-min called Hannah. It was almost midnight. Can you come to the restaurant? Now. Please. She had never heard him say please before. She drove to Yoon's. The restaurant was dark and empty and silent in the way that busy places are only silent when everyone has gone home. She walked through the front door and found Sung-min sitting at the same table where he had made her sit down the first night. The night she stole the bread. There was a plate of food waiting for her. The same 7-course tasting menu he had ordered for a starving stranger 6 weeks ago. He stood when she walked in. Park Sung-min, the man who had built walls around himself like they were made of reinforced steel, looked at her and said 4 words she had never expected to hear from him. I was wrong, I'm sorry. Hannah did not cry. She was done crying. She walked to the table. She sat down. She looked at the food, then she looked at him. The food better still be good. Something in his face broke open. Not broken in the bad way. Broken in the way that a door opens when you finally stop pushing against it and just turn the handle. He sat across from her. She ate. He watched. And this time there was nothing between them but the truth. Sung-min brought Hannah back to work the next day, but not to her old position. He created a new title for her, Director of Strategic Operations. She had a seat at the table for every major decision. She had an office with her name on the door. Vivienne's access to company systems was revoked. Derek's security team swept every digital channel for additional leaks and found none. The bleeding had stopped. Now it was time to go on offense. Hannah and Sung-min built the plan together. Side by side at the conference table in his office, laptops open, coffee growing cold, the city of Beverly Hills glowing through the windows behind them. They worked until 2 in the morning the first night and were back at it by 7 the next morning. The plan was not about intimidation. It was not about threats. It was about business. Pure, precise, devastating business. Step 1, the investors. Hannah flew to Palo Alto with Sung-min and personally presented a forensic audit to the investors who had pulled out. The audit, which she had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing, proved conclusively that the financial documents they had received were fabricated. She walked them through the doctored numbers line by line, showed them the original figures, and demonstrated how each falsified document traced back to the Sable dining group. The investors were not just convinced, they were furious, not at Sung-min, at Victor Sable. They had been manipulated, and powerful people do not forgive being made to look foolish. Every single investor recommitted. 2 of them increased their funding. Step 2. The evidence trail. Derek's security team traced the encrypted email address Vivienne had used to communicate with Sable's people. The trail led directly to Michael Whitmore's personal laptop. Michael, being the careless and arrogant man he had always been, never properly secured his communications. His laptop contained unencrypted copies of every piece of stolen information, along with messages between him and Victor discussing how to use it. Sung-min handed the evidence to his legal team. They filed a federal lawsuit against the Sable Dining Group for corporate espionage and misappropriation of trade secrets. The lawsuit hit the business world like an earthquake. Bloomberg covered it. The Wall Street Journal covered it. Every major food industry publication ran the story. Victor Sable's name became synonymous with corporate theft overnight. His investors started pulling out. His lenders requested emergency reviews. The Bellevue property deal he had stolen from Sung-min collapsed when the property owner backed out, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Victor Sable had spent years building an empire on ruthlessness. Sung-min tore it apart with paperwork. Step 3. The new location. This was Hannah's idea. Instead of fighting to reclaim the original Bellevue property through legal battles that could take years, she found something better. A waterfront space in Bellevue that had just come on the market after a tech company downsized. It was bigger than the original site, better positioned, better views, and because of the tech downturn, it was less expensive. She presented the proposal to Sung-min with the same thoroughness she brought to everything: market analysis, foot traffic projections, demographic breakdowns, cost comparisons. Sung-min looked at the presentation for a long time. Then he looked at her and said, "How did I run this company without you?" Hannah did not miss a beat. Badly. He laughed, not a half laugh, not an almost smile, a real, full laugh that came from somewhere deep in his chest. Derek, standing in the doorway, nearly dropped his coffee. In over a decade of friendship, he had heard Sung-min laugh maybe 5 times. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Federal marshals served Michael Whitmore with lawsuit papers at Victor Sable's office. Michael panicked. He tried to call Hannah. Blocked. He tried to reach Vivienne. Number disconnected. He tried to book a flight out of the country, but his passport was flagged as part of the proceedings. Michael Whitmore, the man who stole $12,000 from a woman who had nothing. The man who showed up at her apartment, offering her money to betray the person she cared about most. He was now facing federal charges that could result in years of prison time and millions in damages. Hannah heard about the serving of papers from Derek. She did not gloat. She did not celebrate. She just nodded once and went back to the Bellevue construction timeline she was reviewing. She did not need revenge. She just needed him to stop being able to hurt anyone else. It was after the Palo Alto investor meeting that everything between Hannah and Sung-min finally became what it had been trying to become since the night on the back steps. They were driving back to Beverly Hills. Sunset was turning the sky into shades of orange and gold. Sung-min pulled over at a rest stop on Highway 101 that overlooked the valley. He turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, looking out at the view. Then he turned to Hannah. "I need to tell you something." She waited. He told her that the night she stole the bread, he did not stop her because of the security breach. He stopped her because he saw her on the camera. She was crying while she took the bread, not sobbing, just silent tears running down her face. And she was whispering something. He turned up the audio on the security feed. She was saying, "I'm sorry," over and over, apologizing to nobody. A woman who was starving, who had nothing, who was stealing bread because she had no other choice, and she still felt guilty about it. "That broke something in me," he said. "I have spent my whole life surrounded by people who take whatever they want and never apologize for any of it. And here was someone who was starving but still had a conscience. I hired you because you were smart. I kept you because you were good. And I am here now because you are the only person who has ever made me feel like I don't have to carry everything alone." Hannah looked at him. The golden light was on his face, and he looked like a man who had just set down something very heavy that he had been holding for a very long time. She reached across the center console and took his hand. He wrapped his fingers around hers and held on, not gently, like she was the only solid thing in a world that had been shifting under his feet for years. They sat there for a long time, watching the sun go down over the valley, holding hands in the silence, and neither of them needed to say anything else. 6 months later, YOON's Bellevue opened to a sold-out first week. The waterfront location was everything Hannah had envisioned and more. Glass walls overlooking Lake Washington. A menu that blended Korean heritage with Pacific Northwest ingredients. Cedar-planked galbi, Dungeness crab bibimbap. A drink menu featuring soju cocktails infused with local botanicals. Every food critic in the Pacific Northwest gave it a rave review. Reservations were booked 3 months out within the first 48 hours. Hannah stood at the center of the opening night reception in a black dress that actually fit her this time, bought with her own money from a real store. She held a glass of champagne she had earned and watched the room fill with people who had no idea that the woman organizing this evening had been sleeping in a Honda Civic 8 months ago. Sung-min found her near the window. The lake was dark and glittering outside, and the reflection of the restaurant lights turned the water into something that looked like scattered gold. "You did this," he said. "We did this," she corrected. He shook his head. "No, this one is yours." Victor Sable's empire did not survive the fallout. The federal lawsuit resulted in a massive settlement. The Sable Dining Group was forced to sell 3 of its 5 properties to cover legal costs. Victor's reputation was destroyed in the industry. He was not bankrupt. Men like Victor Sable always had safety nets, but he was diminished. He would spend the rest of his career trying to rebuild what he lost, and he would never threaten the Park family again. Michael Whitmore pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation with the investigation. He received 2 years of probation, a permanent criminal record, and a court-ordered restitution payment that included the $12,000 he stole from Hannah, adjusted for interest. When the restitution check arrived at Hannah's office, she looked at it for a long time. $12,000, the amount that had destroyed her life. The number that had put her in a car, taken away her apartment, emptied her stomach, and brought her to the front door of a restaurant in Beverly Hills with a loaf of bread stuffed under her hoodie. She endorsed the check and donated every cent of it to a women's shelter in Detroit. She did not need the money. She needed the story to end differently than it started. 3 months after Vivienne's removal from YOON's, Sung-min did something that surprised everyone who knew him. He called his sister. Not to rehire her, not to forgive her exactly. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, takes longer than 3 months. But he told her he had been thinking about their father, about what Yiwon would have wanted. He offered to fund a small cafe for Vivienne in Scottsdale, the city where they grew up. It would be hers, completely separate from the YOON's brand, her own name on the door, her own menu, her own story. Vivienne cried on the phone. She said she did not deserve it. Sung-min said, "Maybe not, but Dad would have wanted you to have something that's yours, and I'm tired of losing family." They were not healed. The wound Vivienne had created was deep and would leave a scar. But they were talking, and talking was a start. Miles graduated from Wayne State University on a warm Saturday in May. Hannah flew to Detroit for the ceremony. She sat in the audience in the gymnasium and watched her baby brother walk across that stage in his cap and gown, and she cried harder than she had cried in her entire life. Not the desperate tears of a woman sleeping in her car. Not the exhausted tears of a woman falsely accused. These were the kind of tears that feel like warm light pouring out of you because your chest is too full to hold all the good. Her mother was not there to see it. Their father was not there to see it. But Hannah was there. And that was enough. It had always been enough. Sung-min had planned to attend the graduation, but a last-minute obligation with the Aspen location held him up. Hannah understood. What she did not understand was why Miles was grinning so hard when they walked out of the ceremony hall. There was a brand new car in the parking lot, a deep blue Honda Accord with a white bow on the roof. A note was tucked under the windshield wiper. Hannah pulled it out and read it. For Miles, because your sister wouldn't let me buy her one. SM. Miles looked at Hannah. Is your boyfriend always this extra? Hannah shook her head and laughed, and the laugh echoed across the parking lot, bright and full and free. The final scene takes place back in Beverly Hills, YOON's flagship, after hours. The restaurant was closed. The chairs were up on the tables. The kitchen was dark except for one section where the overhead light cast a warm circle on the stainless steel counter. Hannah was sitting on the counter, legs dangling. Chef Ronan would have lost his mind if he saw her, and she knew it, and that made it a little more fun. Sungmin was cooking, not the 7-course tasting menu, not anything from the YOON's menu at all. He was making ramyun. Simple, steaming, perfect ramyun with a soft-boiled egg on top. The kind of food you make at midnight for someone you love when you want to tell them something without using words. He set the bowl in front of her. She picked up the chopsticks, took a bite, and closed her eyes. It was good, really good. She opened her eyes and looked at him. He was leaning against the opposite counter with his arms crossed, watching her eat. The same way he had watched her eat the first night, sitting at that table in her dirty hoodie with stolen bread and a growling stomach and tears she refused to let fall. But everything was different now. She was not starving, she was not scared, she was not alone, and neither was he. You know, she said, the first time I walked into this restaurant, I was trying to steal bread. I know, he said, I was there. And now I'm the director of strategic operations for a multi-million-dollar restaurant empire. He raised an eyebrow slightly. You're also eating ramyun at midnight in the kitchen with your boyfriend, so let's not get too impressed with ourselves. She laughed. He smiled. Not the almost smile she had spent weeks trying to decode. A full smile, the kind that reached his eyes and stayed there. Hannah Delaney was homeless, hungry, and broken. She walked into a restaurant in Beverly Hills to steal a loaf of bread and walked into a life she never could have imagined. Not because a powerful man saved her. He did not save her. He opened a door. She walked through it. And then she kicked down every other door herself. Sungmin did not fall in love with a woman he rescued. He fell in love with a woman who never needed rescuing. She just needed one person to look past the dirt on her face and the bread under her hoodie and see what was underneath. Someone extraordinary. He was smart enough to see it, and she was strong enough to prove it. And if you made it to the end of this story, if you smiled, if you got angry during the Vivienne twist, if you were yelling at your screen when Michael showed up at her door, then do me a favor and smash that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story about second chances today. And if you have watched this entire video and you are still not subscribed to this channel, I genuinely do not understand what you are waiting for. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. And I will see you in the next one.